Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising, Radio Sinoland, Shenzhen, just south of the Tropic of Cancer. My wife and I are in the throes of moving across the street to another apartment. We're leaving this, we quit working at this school and we're moving across the street, opening up our own school. Further down the street, and you can see behind me that way. Anyway, on that side, you can see boxes piled up. There's an echo in the room in this office now because all the pictures and stuff are down. It's amazing how much there's more of an echo, and you will have to suffer through this horrible lighting that they gave us. The lights, we took out our good track lights, and so hopefully next time maybe we'll be in our new apartment and the light and sound will be a lot better. Since this one is about football, I'll just show you another one of my shirts. This one's really easy. It just says Shenzhen, and then it's got the logo of the Shenzhen Bulls. Everything's backwards. That's the Shenzhen Bulls right there. There you go, the Shenzhen Bulls. And we're enjoying the World Cup. I'm rooting for France and Russia, and so far so good. So we'll see how it goes in the next couple of weeks. All right, well, here we go. This is a really interesting podcast article. Lots of good links, a bunch of photos. So go to www.chinarising.com. puntopress.com. Click on the blog tab and it'll be up towards the top. Or, of course, if you go to the original SoundCloud and YouTube podcasts, I always put the link there. The title of this is Football Was China's National Sport for Millennia. Why are they so bad now? It's really awful. There's a wonderful picture I glued together of an ancient emperor and President Xi Jinping, and the caption reads, on the left is Emperor Taizu of Song playing Suju football with Prime Minister Zhao Pu. He reigned in the 10th century. This painting is by artist Qian Xuan, who lived from 1235 to 1305. On the right, 1,000 years later, then Vice President Xi Jinping showed off his football skills while inspecting the stadium in preparation for the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Xi was picked to oversee China's Olympic Committee to make sure the games were a success. This is a fact that a lot of people don't know. Was Xi channeling China's millennial love for football by having this photo blasted all over the country? He has been instrumental in turbocharging his citizens' passion for the beautiful game. I first learned about the long history of Chinese football when going to a whiskey bar in Beijing named Cuju, and it's spelled C-U-J-U. Funny enough, it was owned by a Moroccan, which only added to the cosmopolitan ambience of the evening. I had never seen this word in Chinese in my life, and when I looked it up and saw that it meant ancient football/soccer, I was intrigued. The owner confirmed to me that he christened his bar Cuju because he was a passionate lover of the modern game, currently being played at the highest levels of the World Cup in Russia. While it riles many English people who are rightfully proud of their contributions to modern football, on July 15th, 2004, FIFA, the International Federation for Football, officially declared that the game originated in China. Suju is not the name used in today's Mandarin for the modern game of football. That would be Zuqiu. Literally the first character meaning foot and the second character meaning ball, making a compound word. Suju goes back 2,300 years ago, long before the birth of Christ. While the Chinese were refining the rules of football, the West's first foreign policy foray was in full force with Greece's Alexander raping, enslaving, and exterminating entire populations while plundering their resources in Africa and Asia. His Urangloland successors are maintaining this proud Western tradition of genocide, exploitation, and extraction across the same continents and beyond in the Americas and Oceania. Football was developed during the short-lived Qin, spelled Qin, Qin Dynasty, 3rd century BC, where the word China, the name China, likely comes from. It gained tremendous popularity in the Han Dynasty, which lasted 200 years before and 2 centuries after Christ. It was especially popular among the upper class and military. It was also a big hit among the ladies, so take that, Mia Hamm. In the court records, one young woman was so good that she beat an entire men's team by herself, like some female Sino-Pele. Go, girl, go! And then there's a 15th century painting of some ladies, Chinese ladies playing suju by the Ming Dynasty painter Du Jin. That's spelled D-U and then J-I-N. Meanwhile, the West was entertaining its masses with gladiators butchering each other to gory death and feeding prisoners to carnivorous animals as sporting amusement. Nothing like a rousing picnic at the Colosseum, watching famished hyenas and lions scarf down the entrails and brains of what's left of a human carcass. Yummy! Clockwork Orange, me droogs. Time for a little bit of the old ultra-violence, said Alex. Westerners haven't changed much in the last 2,000 years when it comes to their bloodlust, except that it went global centuries ago, much to the tragic loss of the rest of the world, and continue to do so. The Han turned football into a professional sport with stands full of spectators watching the matches. The rules were almost identical to today's game. 2 teams of 12 to 16 players each battled on a pitch with an opposing net on each end to shoot and score into. The only way to move and pass the ball was with the feet. By the Tong Dynasty, which lasted from the 7th to 10th centuries, football was so popular that the capital city had playing fields all over the place, with popularity of the sport spreading to all levels of society. I can imagine kids were kicking footballs up and down streets and in parks just like they do today around the world. The original footballs were made of leather, which were filled with animal hair and or feathers. The Tang Chinese also developed the pressurized air bladder, so like today's ball, it had bounce and could travel much further and farther. It revolutionized the game. Corner kick, goal! And there's a great painting called 100 Children in the Long Spring, a painting by Chinese artist Su Han-chen, who was active from 1130 to the 1160s AD, and it shows 4 kids, bouncing a beautiful colored football together. In the 10th century, the game was so popular that big cities developed professional leagues, and they even held a national championship, predecessors to UEFA, UEFA, the European League, and the World Cup. I wonder how well these medieval players would do this year in Russia. By the Song Dynasty, from the 10th to the 13th centuries, the game evolved less as a team sport and became more of a competition to see who could keep the ball off the ground the longest, using all of the body except the arms, which is very similar to today's rules of contact. Handball! This was called Bai Da. It is still played by millions of Chinese, it's spelled, by the way, B-A-I-D-A. It is still played by millions of Chinese in neighborhoods across the country, except that to accommodate small public spaces, they kick and keep in the air a big weighted shuttlecock, which doesn't bounce and fly all over the place, called a jianzi, J-I-A-N-Z-I. I see locals playing it for hours on end, after work and on the weekends. And then there's a woodcut illustration from a very famous book showing several people playing football. A woodcut illustration from the classic medieval Chinese novel Outlaws of the Marsh, aka The Water Margin, or it's also known as All Men Are Brothers. The story has similarities to Robin Hood, bandits who helped the common folk with wealthy people's money. Several passages in this celebrated sino-fiction laud the Tong Dynasty's beautiful game, Suju. While China's Song Dynasty technology, culture, and civilization were centuries ahead of the rest of the world, Europeans were massacring each other, Muslims, Slavs, and Jews by the millions, as fanatical leaders and their people participated in the genocidal crusades into Palestine. It was suitably called the Dark Ages. Contrasting the West's many bloodbaths, it was during this time that Marco Polo traveled around and lived in China in total awe and amazement of the country and its people. Going back to what was a European hellhole must have been deeply shocking in comparison. It is speculated that football, like so many other things Westerners take for granted, was brought back to Europe along the Silk Roads. I hate to break it to you, Romans, but the Chinese invented spaghetti centuries before it was brought west to Italy, 9th century versus the 13th to 14th century. This list of technical, commercial, and cultural imports from China is a kilometer long into the 20th century and on to today. Thereafter, women got really involved in football, with prostitutes organizing games to attract horny sports jocks to their brothels. Talk about marketing synergy. Shouting out, "Game on!" Joking about how you just had to reduce the pressure in your balls, and asking your friend if they scored, took on whole new meanings in the Ming Dynasty from the 13th to the 17th centuries. Ming emperors even officially banned the game by imperial decree, with some threatening as punishment to cut off the culprit's feet. By the Qing Dynasty from the 17th to the 20th centuries, Suju, or football, became nothing more than historical nostalgia. And then there's a photo, a painting showing the Ming Dynasty Emperor Yongle, early 15th century, taking in a game of football being played by court eunuchs. I guess they didn't need to wear jock straps. Would the Chinese be a global force in football if the game hadn't died a slow, ignominious death here hundreds of years ago? Some people speculate that this is part of the explanation of why China has only been in one World Cup, 2002, when it crashed out with 3 straight losses and couldn't even get a Suju ball into the net one time. It went scoreless. That was 16 long, frustrating years ago. Since 1980, Baba Beijing has been promoting and developing with great success winter and summer Olympic champions. China has gotten no less than 4th place in total summer medal rankings since 2000, although less spectacularly so in the Winter Games. Football has simply not been a targeted sport to excel in. There is a common refrain that, well, China has so many people, they should dominate in football. But it's a false assumption. It has nothing to do with China's huge population and everything to do with tradition and nationwide sports development. Going back decades, this is what we do. 2 cases in point illustrate this very well. Norway, with a population of only about 5 million people, has won more Winter Olympic medals than any other country, way ahead of the rest of the world. Why? Because Norwegian children are put on skis and skates as soon as they can walk and run, and the citizens make the commitment and invest the resources towards these sports. This is what we do. New Zealand, also with a population of about 5 million people, strikes fear every time its All Blacks rugby team trots onto the pitch with their celebrated pre-match Maori war dance called the haka, H-A-K-A. This small country, with the population of a third-tier city in China, is so dominant in world rugby competition that when they lose, everybody is shocked. Why? Because Kiwis are handed a rugby ball as soon as they can stand up, and the entire nation focuses its investment and development in this sport. This is who we are. Then there's a picture of Xi Jinping kicking a football. This photo was a sensation in China when it hit the national media, with then Vice President Xi Jinping kicking a football in Dublin. What most people did not know is that it was a Gaelic football used in a national sport of Ireland, somewhat of a cross between international football and rugby. The distinction was lost. What the Chinese people saw was that their future president is gaga about football. For 2,000 years, the Chinese were the face and spirit of global football, as it were. Then they lost their mojo. But take heart, because they can always get it back. This is who we are and what we do. Since Xi Jinping was elected president in 2013, this same kind of Olympic focus and ambition has turned to nationwide football. Xi loves the beautiful game, and his passion and commitment have infected the entire population. It took the Chinese a generation to become world beaters at the Olympics, and with the money and organization going into football development, winning the World Cup may not take as long as 25 to 30 years. While not officially declared, I suspect that privately, Baba Beijing wants to win at least one, if not both, the men's and women's World Cups by 2049, the centennial anniversary for the founding of Communist Socialist New China. And there's a great photo of a Chinese spectator, and he looks like he just was told, that somebody in his family had died. A heartbroken Chinese fan at the 2002 World Cup, the only time China has qualified for this competition. Hang in there, my friend. Your day of glory will come. All right, this is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland. As usual, please give this YouTube, SoundCloud, at these channels, and the China Rising website to your friends, family, church, temple, mosque, etc., neighborhood, to help people really understand the real China and not all of the disinformation being regurgitated by the mainstream media big lie propaganda machine. Have a wonderful next 2 weeks as we can all have an opportunity to enjoy the final games in the brackets of the World Cup. Bye-bye.